Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Whiteboard Wednesdays with Werner. And we've got Richard with us today, and he is still our expert on data protection. And Richard, today we're building off of the topic that we had last time. We actually introduced some of the data reduction technologies, why it's so important. It was a little bit of a long episode, but we spend time with our audience, and we love doing that. So really, really good to chat about this. So today we're going to start looking at how this applies to resiliency of your data and systems.
Yes.
So we've got those technologies that reduces or makes it more efficient to work with the data, so it's easier to wrangle, right? You had this brilliant analogy of a balloon. You want to fit that thing through the door, you first have to kind of reduce it and then move it into another room, right? Take the air out of it and all of those things. So in terms of resiliency on the data, we kind of bring it into kind of three ways of how we employ that strategy. So we're looking at snapshotting, all right, and then we're looking at safe mode snapshotting, which is something that Pure Storage is very, very good at doing.
Yeah.
And then the concept of obviously an offsite copy of your data.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start on that primary side. So on the primary side of our data, in terms of resiliency, where do we use snapshots?
So snapshots one of the most valuable places that we've seen it used with a lot of our customers is for very quick recovery, very fast return back to operational state.
Yes.
We're talking, in the order of minutes.
Okay. So like really fast.
Like really, really very fast. I mean, we've had customers where they've had a system that's gone down and we've managed to bring them back within 5-10 minutes. And so a local snapshot, and that's what we term a local snapshot, is effectively a copy of a point in time of the data onto the same system. And the benefit of that being that it's very fast because it's to the same system, and bringing it back when you need it is very fast because it's on the same system.
And that copy that we make, we actually use the data reduction technology in that as well.
Absolutely.
Right? It's just a part of that mapping that creates a record of what the data looked like at that point in time.
Yeah.
So when we talk about actually taking a snapshot, we're not moving another set of data. So it's not like we now have to put more capacity.
We're
down.
not cloning. We're actually what we're actually doing is we're copying that little map.
Yes.
And we're just keeping a reference to everything that changes.
Yes.
So at the moment of copy, there's actually zero capacity. It's zero in very much in inverted commas. Obviously, there's a tiny bit. Over time, however, those snaps can grow because they need to keep a record of what was and what is.
Okay. But for all
intents and purposes, it's zero space.
And we can basically reapply that point in time copy at
a moment's notice. Just
press
pull
button.
the trigger and we go.
Okay. So if there's somebody deleted an account, did something really dumb, and it's usually for that type of protection.
Typically
right?
Someone made a whoopsie, and we need to just bring ourselves back.
And you don't want to move an entire backup all the way across the network.
Recovering from a backup can be
takes hours.
Yeah.
Maybe days.
Absolutely.
So, very quick recovery, snapshotting, perfect way of using it. Utilizes the data reduction technology, which is embedded in all of our technologies, and that's great. So, what's the next step from there with protection and resiliency?
Well, so if we look at that, that's still within one array.
Yeah.
So one of the concerns in the data protection
one system, yes.
In one system.
Yes.
And one of the concerns, of course, with that one singular system is if something happens to the system itself. So now we're not talking to a volume issue, rather the system issue.
Yeah.
So if that system goes down, or more specifically, I'd like to talk about if we get ransomware on that system.
Okay, which is
topical,
right?
It's very topical at the moment. Now, with regards to ransomware, one of the other very cool technologies that Pure has brought out and is offering to their customers is what they call a safe mode snapshot.
Okay.
Now that is another copy, possibly in the same data center, possibly elsewhere, but the point is it's a copy of the snapshot, but now this snapshot is both audited and very controlled as to how it can be cleaned and removed. There is a huge process of management that for all intents and purposes can't be bypassed.
Okay.
And what that means is we now have the security of our data, first of all, not being on the same platform that could break, but on a completely separate platform. And that platform is then protected by this, by these this complex system of security
almost
protocols.
like a lockdown of your data,
Absolutely.
right? So that you have controlled access to that,
Yes.
and it's separated from the actual primary
It's
system.
physically separate from the primary system.
So that's effectively what's known as a safe mode snapshot in our world, or in the pure world.
Yep.
And there's obviously various iterations of that, but effectively that's a way of protecting against ransomware. And with pure, just by owning pure, you inherit that capability.
Yes, yeah, that's one of those great things about Pure is there's basically all the features that if a feature can exist for your array, you have access to it on your array.
Absolutely right. So now we've spoken about resiliency in terms of the system, being able to recover quickly. We've spoken about resiliency against ransomware, but that's all still within the same location. What if that Chinese balloon fell on our data center? The Americans didn't really, check where it was going to land, and it blows up our data center. What do we do then?
That's when we need offsite.
Offsite copies, right?
Offsite copies, and I mean that's a very broad term, but the premise is very simple: that we have a copy that's not in the same site that got impacted by whatever disaster.
Yeah, so
physically separate.
So, I mean, that's where we're starting to go from fast recovery to actually disaster recovery. So that copy of that offsite data will take longer to get there, right? Get back, because it's got to travel some distance.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And you'll be using that backup technology to have a consistent copy being pushed across, eh?
Yeah.
And that's really how simple it is. So we spoke about the 3 levels of resiliency. We spoke about resiliency with a quick recover. We spoke about resiliency against ransomware, and then also about resiliency in terms of your primary site and why you have a secondary site. And that secondary site could be in the cloud. It could be, as long as there's a copy of your data stored,
Absolutely.
There's various ways. There's online and offline and a whole bunch of different ways, which we're not going to go into in this episode. But that's really the 3 levels of resiliency. All of them utilizing data reduction technologies within their platforms at various levels and stages to do that. So thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Whiteboard Wednesdays with Werner and with Richard, and we'll see you in the next episode. Please don't forget to like, share, and follow our LinkedIn page.